Hello, folks, and welcome to the podcast. I've got with me today the founders of 2ULaundry, Dan DeQuisto and Alex Smereczniak.
Nailed it.
The two hardest names in the world to pronounce. I interviewed Alex back in 2019, and it was one of the episodes I got the most and the best feedback on. People really like him and especially like the company. And I'm trying to revisit some of my more popular guests who had to pivot dramatically during COVID. So I'm really excited to do this one. Dan, I realize that it is your wife's birthday. As they say, happy wife, happy life. So we'll try not to keep you here too late. So thank you for giving us some of your time, and thank you to your wife as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So for the listeners who don't know, can you give the quick history on 2ULaundry, the progress you made going into March 2020, and talk about what the original vision might have been?
Yeah. How quick do you want?
Take your time. It's only Dan's marriage at stake here.
Yeah, Dan knows all too well. This could be 15 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. I'll try to do it. But
do take your time, because your story is awesome. And again, the more people that can hear it, the better, because it's a really good story, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always get asked this question: Why did you guys get into laundry? Did you have some sort of traumatic experience as a kid? Did you get stuck in the dryer? And thankfully it was none of that. Dan and I both grew up together in Red Wing, Minnesota. It's a small town just south of Minneapolis. And I ended up at Wake Forest for my undergrad. And my dad had always taught me front load the job, work as much as you can, try to find ways to make extra money. And so when I went to Wake, I worked for another student-run startup called Wake Wash on campus. And they were a door-to-door laundry and dry cleaning delivery business for students there. And I fell in love with the model. I thought I could scale to Duke, Chapel Hill, Vanderbilt, you name it. And so when they were going
all the small private ACC schools,
a lot of affluent families, parents that are worried about their kids going off for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to buy it, and I had, I think, $3,000 saved up, and which was not nearly enough. So I convinced two others to clear their savings account with me. We bought it from them our sophomore year, and then ended up learning more doing that than any class I had taken at Wake. Just loved the experience. But then when it came to graduate, my partners wanted to go do investment banking, marketing, and I don't want to be the guy that held them back from selling it. So we ended up selling it for about 10 times what we bought it for. Helped pay for a lot of our way through school. Learned again more than any class I had taken there. Thought my hands were clean of the laundry and dry cleaning business. And moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina to do consulting at Ernst & Young. And while I was there, I saw two companies on the West Coast, Washio and Rinse, raise a combined $30 million to go after the $40 billion laundry and dry cleaning industry with what I felt were the wrong models. And that's when I called Dan up, and he'd been doing sales and marketing at startups in Minneapolis. So I knew not only was he one of my best friends from growing up, but he has a complementary skill set to me, sales and marketing background. I was more finance and ops. He knew what it took to be involved in a startup. It's a ton of sacrifice for maybe not the same benefits that you would at a Fortune 500 company. You got to be scrappy. You got to just have to have that kind of risk-taking mindset. And so when I told him about it, he sure enough had that risk-taking mindset. Broke the lease on his house. Broke up with his girlfriend at the time, now his wife. She's since come down, and it's happily ever after.
Full circle.
Full circle.
And so he packed up the car and moved with one other guy that we grew up with. They drove 20 hours straight. I don't think you guys stopped at all. Came down to Charlotte, and we started 2U in late 2015. We say it's January of 2016. And it was really under three kind of reasons we were going to be different, or three hypotheses that we wanted to go validate. One was, instead of being the Uber for laundry, where we have 1099 contractors, going from your house to the facility, to my house to a facility, and really this kind of like acute impulse decision like ride sharing or food delivery, where if you're hungry, you need the food now. If you need to get somewhere, you need the ride now. They were trying to treat laundry the same way, when in reality.
So when you say they, does this mean Washio and Rinse? We're taking more of the. They
saw Uber's success and said, "Hey, let's go raise money, different vertical. This will be great." But laundry doesn't act like ride sharing or food delivery. It's a chronic, recurring pain point. Everyone's got their laundry day. It's Sunday or Saturday or some day of the week, and they do it over and over. And so our thought was, why don't we build a solution that fits that behavior, not one that mirrors another successful startup? And so that was the first thought: is we'll be the FedEx or the UPS for laundry instead of the Uber. We'll have static, scheduled routes with branded vehicles with W-2 employees instead of 1099, and that's how we'll do it. We'll get efficiency back for what we have to pay in taxes and benefits and whatnot.
It's interesting that you say that, because Maggie, who introduced us in the beginning and is also coming back to do a repeat podcast here next Wednesday, I think she took a very similar approach. I don't want to be the Uber of dog walking. I want full-time employees. I want them to be loyal or, well compensated. Maybe they're not full-time employees. Maybe they're 1099, but they're working for her. It's not just randomly you go find a dog walker off the street.
And I think that control gives you, especially in businesses like dog walking or laundry, where it's so personal. Whereas ride sharing, you really just have an immediate need and you want it filled. Whereas it's your dog. People look at it as their kids, their fur babies. They want someone they can trust. Same with laundry. It's the first big decision I think we all make every day, whether it's conscious or not. What am I going to wear today? What do I look the best in, feel the best in, and really represent who I am as an individual. And so quality has to be at the forefront. And that was our second hypothesis, was we can't outsource all the cleaning, because that would be like Apple outsourcing its design. It's its core competency. It's what made them who they are. And for us, we wanted quality to be what makes us who we are, and people remember when they use our service. So quality was the second piece. How do we vertically integrate or own more of the supply chain over time? And then the last one was, instead of targeting New York, Chicago, LA, and maybe getting a false positive of, hey, it works. There's tens of millions of people live here. It's great. But then in Charlotte, it doesn't work. And it's a smaller opportunity than you thought. Our thought was, if you prove it in Charlotte, this can work in 30, 40 other U.S. cities.
Awesome. And so you talk about the three hypotheses, and what did you want to turn the company into? Where in your mind was the 5 or 10 year plan to take the company at that time?
Yeah, so in Dan and I's early conversations, I think, and especially him sacrificing as much as he did to come down and move to Charlotte, it was, hey, this isn't going to be a lifestyle business. We want to make this as big as we possibly can, as quickly as we possibly can, with the goal of selling it, taking it public, really building a household brand around laundry and dry cleaning. It didn't exist before. It's such a highly fragmented industry. It's massive. And there wasn't a clear winner, and it tied, as the most recognizable, but that's a detergent. There wasn't an actual physical retail business or delivery business that had made a name for itself at that point. And so we wanted to set out to go and do that for the first time.
That's great. And so in Charlotte, along the way, obviously, your trucks have become ubiquitous part of the Charlotte scene in general. You see them driving around. How many trucks do you have in Charlotte?
So we've got a fleet of about 14 vehicles here in Charlotte now, and it varies. Given days of the week, some days are more popular than others, and so you'll see more of a sea of pink out there. But we actually had a VC from Raleigh come visit, and he's like texted us, hey, there's a sea of pink I'm just driving through in Charlotte. This is incredible. And like you said, immediately sticks out. You can't miss them.
Yep, absolutely. So you guys going into March, because I want to talk about it as COVID starts to hit, but you also had opened in Raleigh and Atlanta. Is that correct? So
yep.
You had delivery services, but you didn't have, and in Charlotte you had the laundry room, correct? So that's a very successful retail operation that you decided to open up. Is there any more commentary you want to give on that pre-COVID or?
Yeah, so I think, as we set out to build this nationally recognized brand, we realized, especially with those three hypotheses, we have to control our own destiny, which was part of that was the supply chain. And we need to validate that we can scale to other markets. So we went through Techstars. It's a top 3 accelerator program. They're the only one that had a program in a city that we wanted to launch in that was immediately close to us. So we used Techstars in 2017 to help raise a seed round, and then also launch our second market of Atlanta. Our thought was, hey, we need to go validate that this is not just a one-hit wonder in Charlotte. Launched Atlanta at the tail end of it. Dan moved down to Atlanta, so moving again within a year or two. And then in Charlotte, we started to have multiple facilities that we were going into with our own team to clean, and that just wasn't working as well. You have these very sporadic owners. They're not as professionalized as the dry cleaning operators. And that's when Electrolux, $18 billion appliance company, North American headquarters is here in Charlotte, said, hey, we love what you guys are doing. We'll de-risk it for you, and we'll help you build your first facility. We'll finance 100% of the equipment, and we could de-risk it that way. So we built that store. Completely new endeavor for us. It was a walk-in retail laundromat, open 7 days a week, that we would then bolt on our 2U pickup and delivery volume on top of. And that was a big inflection point for us, because margins improved significantly, quality control improved significantly. We realized, hey, there's a model here where we can go build multiple of these, partner with Electrolux, layer 2U on top of it, and that's how we scale.
So just to make sure everybody's clear that's listening, you're doing the work for your delivery services, but families are coming in and washing their clothes just like inside of any other retail location.
That's exactly right. And one thing that I think like any aspirational set of founders or startup employees, that they want to build something that was better than that was there previously. And so we put a ton of time and thought into the design of the store, what amenities we'd offer, how do we make this an experience that mirrors what our 2U customers are getting, but for a completely different demographic that might not have access to 2U because it's not as affordable. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories that we share a lot now, especially as and we'll get to it, the franchising. When we first opened, someone came up to us just sobbing and tears, hugging us. And at first you're a little taken aback. You're like, hey, what's going on? Why are you grabbing onto me? And she was just like, no one ever builds anything nice for us. And that was, I think, one of the most rewarding pieces of feedback that we've ever received. And she was right. We didn't realize that, hey, the lower income population are treated like second class citizens. They're taking public transportation. The businesses might not be as well kept. And all we did was provide a children's play area, free Wi-Fi, things that I think any person in 2019 would like to have at a place that they go to. And it made a difference. They noticed. It literally brought someone to tears, and they appreciate it that much. So,
well, hopefully the banks take notice, and because they notoriously the banking services available to lower income families are abysmal, and it's part of what reinforces the cycle of poverty. So I think this is a great story for entrepreneurs out there. You can make money servicing with the right level of customer support and customer touch and thoughtfulness about your offering. It can be a very lucrative business for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So you have a business predicated on saving people time by delivering clean, folded laundry, so that they can look nice for work when they go into the office, and they don't have time at home. So walk me through the discussions you two were having as you watched the lockdowns being announced. How does that unfold from even the first time you heard about COVID? Maybe it was the night that Tom Hanks announced he had COVID. Maybe it was when NBA canceled their season that same night. Everybody has a different moment where they realized, oh shit, this is something I have to deal with. What was that for you guys?
I reflect on this quite a bit because this is, building a startup. The first, 3.5 years of it, it's a roller coaster. It doesn't stop. And then you add the COVID element to it. And we were just starting to hit like this new stride in energy, which was tough to like sit back and even believe this COVID thing was happening. We just had raised that Series A. We were going down this massive plans for expansion, just doubled our service area in Atlanta, launched Raleigh. March was on pace to be the biggest month ever for our business, and I don't even remember what point it was. I think it was Trump on camera speaking and talking about the level of detail here of the impact, and it was tough to even just digest. Going like, okay, we're spending all this money on acquisition, it's working, we're gearing up for expansion, and now we have to make some very, very tough decisions. And so it was even tough to sit back and think, oh, wow, what's about to come? And that's when we started asking ourselves, like, what do we do? We need to talk to the board. There's no playbook for this. How do we even navigate this without causing chaos or internally? And that's where really we had to step up as leaders to make sure that we were effectively communicating that to everybody. And so I think that was the biggest part of us challenge us as leaders in the business.
Well, you're lucky to have the board, a board that can challenge you that way. And I think that's very instructive. This is why you have a board and why you have advisors and why you have investors, because there are people you guys are both smart, very, very smart business people. But it's always good to have other smart people around who care. What are some specific things or tactical things that the board challenged you guys with during that time?
I reflect back on it and share with others that I think it was one of the more like impressive experiences that I've ever had. So the board called this meeting. That was my answer to that same question you just asked was our board called a meeting it was either late February or early March. It was still pretty early on. There was a few cases in Washington State. And they called a meeting and said, hey, guys, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. You should go ahead and shut anything down that's not profitable. It's going to be a cash game for the next year or two until this gets figured out and we see what the world looks like.
That is so painful to contemplate when you've just put all this energy. You've just moved your partner down to Atlanta. Not just, but he's relocated to Atlanta, and
your team down there. We launched another market, and so they're saying, shut anything down that's not profitable. And to your point, it was, well, what do you mean? We just launched Raleigh a month ago, and it's crushing the goals that we had for it. Mm-hmm. Atlanta's going well. Things are, as Dan mentioned, we're hitting the stride. And so Dan and I admittedly left that meeting, maybe, are they being alarmist? Maybe, and like started to have those like kind of that like devil on your shoulder creep in and be like, hey, maybe they're wrong. But then, we talk seriously amongst ourselves, and we have a board for a reason. Mm-hmm. One of our board members started Pamlico Capital in town. Another is the CEO of a top 5 marketing agency in the country. Another is a CFO and president of Spanx. And so collectively, this is this group of incredibly intelligent people, way smarter than Dan and I, way more experienced than Dan and I. And so you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, is the devil on my shoulder really like worth not listening to the advice that they have? And, let's say they're wrong. You make this decision tree, right? Like they give you this advice to shut it down. You don't listen and they're right. You've lost all the goodwill that you have with your board. You listen to them and they're right. You've made a good decision. You save the company time and money, et cetera. And of the other two, of those 4 options in total, that one really presented itself as the one that made the most sense. If they're wrong and we shut it down, we can always turn it back on. We have a lot of the customer base there. They'll understand. And
you had a healthy balance sheet at this point because you were coming out of a raise where you didn't over deploy your capital. And
right.
Yeah, I think we had to look at those as fortunate opportunities for us to unfortunately have to take that step back, but we have some of the things working for us to persevere, power through, and give us a new sort of breadth of energy to reinvent ourselves and think, okay, we need to look at this as just another challenge to overcome.
And an opportunity, really.
And an opportunity. And I think we did just that after really reflecting back on it, although it was probably one of the hardest things to hear, and feeling like you take these steps back after just taking 3 steps forward, which is tough in a startup. And so I think we did that well, and now it's time to execute again.
Yeah. So in full disclosure, I invested in you guys back in 2019, and so I'm copied on the investor communications, and you sent out a note, and reading it, there's some alarming talk in there just about, hey, we're shutting these growth avenues down. We're just in survival mode. It's alarming because even as an investor, you're picturing, Alex and Dan ringing the bell on NASDAQ, right? And now all of a sudden we are in a fight for our survival, and we are going to do whatever we have to do to maximize the value of this thing. And I remember, I think you had wording, correct me if I'm wrong, that was, if we have to shut down Charlotte, that's fine. We'll keep the money in the bank, and when things come back, we'll come, mm-hmm. We'll come back and revisit things, it's just a mindset that I think you have to have. And it's a testament to the board and to you guys as business people and leaders, that you were willing to take that stance, because it's not the same thing as what you're thinking 3 months earlier, 6 months earlier, when you're thinking, how do I get to 30 cities? It's just mm-hmm. a very different mindset. So as an investor, that made me feel very good reading it. Can you tell me, how did other investors react when they get that note?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what to expect. I think that was one of the things that I was personally nervous about was, what kind of backlash, if any, are we going to get? And when we talked to the board, after we made the decision, preserve cash, they gave us, I think, a few weeks to wind certain things down. And then we talked again. We were talking pretty frequently at this time. And they said, all right, now that you've winded the things down that needed to be winded down, take the next month or so to really think about what's the next move and consider everything. And they challenged us, you pivot into a completely different vertical? Do you return capital? Everything was on the table at that point. Especially that conversation around do we sell, what we have left that's of value for pennies on the dollar and then return capital, or do we reinvent ourselves, or do we stay the course and just hunker down? And that exercise in and of itself was incredibly valuable, but also tough. Like, you're starting to look at these things and you have to be objective about it. You have a fiduciary responsibility to investors, your team, the board, but you're still so emotionally attached to this thing. And so it is hard to try to separate the two and make a sound decision, but you have to do it. It's what we signed up for. And
I think this is very instructive. We shouldn't wait for a crisis as entrepreneurs to force this type of thinking. It's something we should constantly be doing. I don't know if you guys know Garth Moulton and Chris Halligan, but they created a company called Other Screen. They built a fantastic team. They went and raised money from investors, a VC in Austin, and they had a realization that we missed the mark. They had that. They did what you guys just described, but they are both very successful serial entrepreneurs, and they did that exercise regularly. And I think it is something we should ask. What are we doing? Should we be in this business? Should we? And their decision was to return capital. And I think if anything, it increased their aura in the eyes of everybody in the entrepreneurial and the investment community, because they made the mature decision, which was to return capital. And I think it's good. We should be considering those options. You guys obviously made a different decision. So what was the decision that you guys came to coming out of that exercise?
So when we kind of narrowed it down to the next, the 2 or 3 options that we have in front of us, we presented those to the board. One was to return capital. One was, hey, there's something here in this real estate asset that we have. Our laundromat has grown 20% throughout the pandemic, throughout COVID, when most retail businesses are down 15 to 25% on average. All these retail businesses, restaurants, shops, et cetera, but ours is, people are flocking to. It's growing. It's validation that it's pandemic proof, recession proof. Laundromats have been a good place to park cash for a while. Is there a world where we start to franchise, package what we've learned building this location, the relationships we have with Electrolux, the technology we have, and then the kicker being all this volume that we could bring to these laundromats by way of our 2U pickup and delivery service. So the analogy is, could we sell McDonald's or Chick-fil-A franchises and then 2U be the DoorDash or Uber Eats or Postmates equivalent in this vertical? Could we do something similar? And so we shared that with the board. They said, hey, returning capital is going to be, people are going to lock in some sort of loss. You guys are clearly passionate about it. You guys aren't sitting here saying, hey, we're ready to hang up the jersey and do something else. And you guys are passionate.
Go back to ENY.
Yeah. Like, you guys are still passionate. Passionate about it. And if there's anyone that's going to figure out this space, it's going to be you guys. And, you have our full, support and everything that you guys want to go and do next. So if you believe there's an opportunity here, which it sounds like there is, we should go after franchising. And so that's when we made the decision to do it, shared it with the investors. And that's when I was, I wasn't sure if I was going to get emails or calls saying, hey, why didn't you return capital? And our lead investor called a week later, said, hey, he started the call with, hey, Alex, I know this isn't what you want to hear. And I was like, oh, great. Here comes the return capital comment, and we're going to have to reconsider that. And he said, what a blessing. And I was like, I don't know if I'd go that far, but his point was that he's like, I think this is actually a much more scalable model than you first pitched us. We're all incredibly excited about the opportunity of you going out and building this system of real estate, assets essentially that are going to fuel the growth of 2U. And not only now are you constrained to constrained by cities that only 2U would work, Nashville, Austin, Dallas. Now you can build these locations in Winston-Salem, Gastonia, and you're also servicing the whole spectrum now. You've got this lower income demographic that benefits and thrives from the retail locations you're building, college kids as well, and in college cities that these could work in. But then you also have the more affluent family who's using the 2U service, and you're now pairing and marrying both together, have control of your own destiny that someone else is essentially going to help finance the growth of, because these franchisees will own them and partake in that revenue share of a revenue stream that we weren't planning on growing ourselves to begin with.
So it sounds like pivoting to this model, if anything, you think that you can scale faster by doing this.
Yeah, because as we were in Atlanta and Raleigh, we were realizing we're going into other people's laundromats, and they were having the same issue, even though it's our own team using these assets. The laundromats are difficult to work with. They want you in there at weird hours. They're not laid out and designed for our purpose, whereas our store here in Charlotte's very thoughtful and intentional about why it was built the way it was, the square footage, the layout, the machine mix, et cetera. And you don't get that unless you're building it yourself. And so as we started to do it in Atlanta, you realize these aren't cheap. The equipment's expensive. If you're going to own the land, it's even more expensive. And even if you're not going to own the land, it's an expensive build. And so is there a way that we can, and we don't want to raise venture capital to finance real estate. We're not big enough to be bankable to take on all sorts of debt. So eventually we're going to hit this plateau anyway through the SBA that we just can't build more of these on our own anyway. And so franchising presents itself as a good opportunity to give up a portion of the business that we had no intention of, really getting into from the beginning. It's kind of a means to an end for the 2U business. And so it really presented this awesome solution that benefits everyone. 2U gets what it needs to scale and grow pretty efficiently. The franchisees are able to make money and put their dollars into a good investment that's fairly safe, pretty passive. And then our investors and our employees get to benefit from the value that's created between pairing the two together.
That's awesome. And the store is really cool. I toured it with an investor that I think I introduced you to, but
yep.
And the closest thing I can compare it to is what CarMax did for used car sales, right? You go into a CarMax and there's way more inventory than any other used car lot that you would go on to. The process is transparent. There's just a lot of benefits to the way they thought about how retail should work in CarMax. CarMax is a former client of mine, and it was interesting because, as a rule, they will not hire salespeople who have any history in cars and they may have changed their mind as they got to massive scale, but that was one of the real early tenets, is that car retailing is fundamentally broken, and if you're part of the existing animal, you're part of the problem. When you look for franchisees, and I want to talk in a little bit more depth later, but I'm curious, are you going to look for people who have operated laundromats before? Because the experience is so completely different. I can't imagine that knowing much about laundromats is really all that helpful to running one of your stores.
Yeah, right now as I'm owning and running the internal sort of sales process of identifying these owners, it's clear that we're now enabling a new type of owner to come in and operate who hasn't really been educated on this model, but is looking to diversify outside of other income streams, whether it's the stock market or another type of franchise business. This is through the pandemic, we're able to kind of check the boxes on this is an essential business to our economy now. It's a semi-absentee model that doesn't require you to spend 20, 30, 40 hours of your time a week on it. And it's an exciting return if you look at the fundamentals of the business. And so we're now enabling a new type of owner to come in and invest and leverage our expertise, our operational playbooks, something that we're incredibly confident in, and supporting these franchisees. And it ultimately is a win-win when you're bringing these types of sophisticated investors in, using our operational excellence, marrying the two together. And you kind of create this backbone that now 2U can scale on top of. And so that's been interesting compared to a lot of other laundromat owners that we've interacted with along the way, who are more narrow-minded. They don't want to make change. They don't want innovation. They don't want to use technology. They don't want to make their business harder to run. When in reality, you may have this learning curve of making it a little bit harder, but over time, it's going to become easier as you adopt our processes, the technology. So I'm excited.
Well, the other thing that you didn't mention, but I assume has to be a big deal, is I recall from earlier conversations with Alex that you guys, the relationship with Electrolux is hard to overstate the importance of that, because they're giving you data on where laundry room, they helped you figure out the exact location to go to, right? And I can't imagine that any franchisee going out on their own or any laundromat owner gets access to that kind of data, and they get that automatically by working with you guys.
Yep. Yeah, it's part of the value we're going to add in the relationships is, our aspirations and our vision is to be a national brand, be the first national brand. And with that, I mean, we're establishing those long-term relationships. We're selling that vision. We're betting on that vision. And through that, you're making these connections that ultimately add a ton of value to these operators, and you can pass that on and just add that additional value as you scale, almost like an agency does, bringing on and sort of maximizing their economies of scale.
So out of curiosity, because you mentioned you may be opening up in smaller cities that you may not have considered before because you have a great franchisee, do you think that means, does that simplify your expansion plans for the delivery business? Because it's, hey, we've got this retail franchisee here who's doing really well, that, you know, the delivery business, we feel comfortable that we can build a delivery. Obviously, it's a different demographic, but does that help you in the process of figuring out where to open up the delivery service next?
Yes and no. I mean, our hypothesis right now is to identify these potential owners who want to open and build multiple locations that may want to benefit from the exclusive relationship that we have with 2U and Laundry Lab, our franchise model, where we're looking for an owner in Raleigh who wants to open up 3 of them, who we can leverage all 3 of their locations at scale, opening up that market. And so I think it excites those types of individuals. The 2 opportunities that we have are somewhat different, where an owner can come in and just run a day-to-day laundromat, be very hands-off, semi-absentee, but the person that wants to maximize their investment and may want to spend a little bit more time in the business can take advantage of that pickup and delivery model. They'll be a little bit more hands-on, have to hire a few more employees. So I think it clearly kind of delineates the 2 opportunities when you're looking for that alignment of that investor who wants the pickup and delivery as well. But it'll be interesting to learn over the next 12 months what happens. Yeah,
that is interesting. So when you look at how you monitor, do you give a percentage of the volume for I mean, if this is proprietary, please don't feel obligated to tell me, but somehow you've got to incentivize them then because they've got to hire more staff.
Yep.
Do they just get a percentage of the earnings on that? Do they get some ownership in the delivery service? How do you guys think about incentivizing that behavior?
So traditionally, laundromats, you know, they're making money on people coming in, putting quarters in, swiping their cards, vending, over-the-counter sales, and then they also have over-the-counter wash, dry, fold. So if you live near a laundromat, you can come in, drop your bag of sheets and gym clothes off, and they'll do it for $1 a pound. And so all that we're really doing is going to them and saying, hey, we'll bring you thousands of these over-the-counter wash, dry, fold orders. You don't have to go out and get them. You don't have to deal with 100 different people. It's one brand, 2U, coming to you with a van or 2 full of these clothes, and you just need to process them. And so really the incentive for them is, do I want a laundromat that has 17 to 13% utilization on the equipment that I spent $700,000 on, or do I want 20 to 30% utilization on that same equipment? And I think the majority of investors and of franchisees are going to say, hey, I want a more utilized laundromat because it's going to be more profit, more cash flow, more money in my pocket. Otherwise, these assets are just going to sit here and not be used. So it's really an asset utilization play. And our belief is that most will understand that and say, hey, I'll hire the store manager or the other 4 to 6 frontline employees to process this volume.
So if you were running laundry room as a Laundry Lab and you were a franchisee, and maybe it sounds like you maybe already think of it that way, and that's Dan's role in this, or one of his roles in this. But if you were to think of it that way, what percentage of the business of the laundry room is the delivery service here in Charlotte?
Yeah, so the first location that we built's a little atypical because it is 6,300 square feet. Mm-hmm. The franchise model, the locations will be anywhere from 2,500 on the very low end up to 4,000 square feet on the high end. And so they're really purpose-built for maximizing the cash flow for that franchisee. The reason we have that extra 2,000 to 2,500 square feet at the laundry room is the initial thought was we'll do the entire city of Charlotte's laundry here. And so they'll be less of a footprint, but they'll be able to handle still a fourth of what we do here in Charlotte today. So they'll, instead of doing $2.2 million in the back door via 2U, they'll be able to add an additional $300K to $500K in revenue to their franchise business.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense actually. So, do you think having your app, the delivery service, that whole service, strengthens the customer experience in the store, or are they two different experiences and two different channels?
It's two very different experiences, because the people going into the laundromat traditionally aren't using the pickup and delivery. They probably live within a 1 to 3 mile square radius of the physical location.
So the only maybe they do some mobile payment processing, but they're really not interacting with the app at all. Okay.
And we're working on some cool stuff now for the franchisee experience. So for the LaundryLab brand, the retail brick and mortar brand, the franchisees are going to benefit from a suite of tools that show them machine utilization. They can quickly change prices, and it'll eventually permeate into the customer experience where they're using mobile app. Right now we have one that's it's basically a off-the-shelf version that Electrolux has built with, in partnership with another company, LaundryLux, that we're getting access to and that our customers are getting access to. But we want to come in and eventually have this suite that's integrated and proprietary from the LaundryLab experience.
I think the thing to talk about there is, though, is still at the end of the day, it's a tool that provides convenience to the customer. When you're talking about getting your laundry done, whether you're the lower end or the higher end of the spectrum, I mean, the tool still functions the ability to add convenience, and convenience matters to both of those types of customers in a different way. And I think that's what we're really excited about, bringing sort of the innovation to both of those spaces, because it's newer for the laundromat customer. They're used to going in and pumping quarters in, but now they have the ability. I believe even our app takes EBT and a lot of other things.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
wow.
So it enables them to maximize their cash flow and convenience. And what we find a lot of our laundromat customers doing, the technology of their mobile app allows for notifications when their washer's done or their dryer's done. So we find a lot of our customers will come in, start a wash, go run their errands, get a notification, come back, go run another errand. And it's just that convenience.
Hopefully take their dog over to Skip Town. I kid. No, it's interesting. There was a story that Alex told me at some point. He showed me a 150-pound washing machine, which I knew nothing about the poundage of washing machines. But after you told me, I noticed any laundromat, I always look, and they always have it listed. We have 30, 40, 50, and 60, but nothing approaching 150. And I think also you guys worked with Electrolux to re-engineer the foundation so that this thing could spin 50% faster. And you were thinking strictly at the time about, well, if we need to pump volume through here, we're going to want these bigger machines and we're going to want them to spin faster, which saves a bunch of time. And I think you were surprised, Alex, that you had customers using those machines. It turns out everybody, no matter their income level, wants to save time, right? Yep. And so I think that's a great example of where the delivery business enables a scale and a scope that you probably might not be able to achieve without the delivery business, that actually benefits the retail customers as well.
Yep.
I mean, absolutely. The machines spin faster, so it means less time in the dryer, and so they're in and out of there in 50 minutes instead of an hour and a half. And at the end of the day, people don't want to sit in a laundromat or anywhere that's not their home or their friend's place or wherever they want to be spending their time. They don't want to sit in a laundromat for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then from an owner perspective, I mean, you're saving on utilities and you're getting more customers using the machines. If one customer's taking up those two machines for 50 minutes, I mean, you're adding more customers the ability to leverage those machines and maximize revenue, which is benefits both customer and owner.
That's great. Do you think at some point other sophisticated laundromat owners start to pick up on this and start to adopt some of your practices, or do they have just such a good business that's shooting fish in a barrel that they don't feel the need to try some of these innovations?
And I think this was exciting about the space in general, is the majority is very much, this is how it's always been done. This is what we do. We're not changing the formula. It works. Leave us alone with your innovation. Which, I mean, to entrepreneurs is, hey, this is ripe for disruption. There's this kind of legacy way of thinking. And then the ones that are more progressive and, wanting to adapt and learn, through this pickup and delivery offering, I think that is the topic that's talked about the most, is I've already maximized revenue for this 1 to 3 mile square radius around my store. How do I go out and get more of it? And they want to do pickup and delivery for gyms, Airbnbs, yoga studios, dentist offices, etc. But they're not sure, how do I staff it? How do I even do the routing? I mean, when we first started, it wasn't because we weren't, technical in nature, but there weren't tools for us to go do this. So we were doing it in MapQuest and made a spreadsheet that automated the pickup routes based on your day. And most laundromat owners aren't going to go find a Routific or this off the shelf software because they're not used to using tools like that, and so they have no idea where to start. So our thought is these tools that we're building that are built for the laundromat industry, they're going to want to either license this, they're going to want to convert to a Laundry Lab franchise just to get access to these things, and that's an exciting opportunity for us as well.
So what did you learn about each other in a time of crisis that surprised you? I'll ask you first, Dan, not to put you on the spot, but what did you learn about Alex that surprised you during this time of crisis?
I'm going to pat him on the back here and boost his ego, but I think that he's meant to be a leader. I learn a lot from Alex, always have. He's always pushed me to be my best. And I think he always looks at this a little bit more practically, and I'm a little bit more emotional when it comes to some of these harder decisions. And so I think he really challenged me to level up as a leader during that time, and it just gave me more confidence in him that I'm gonna level up. I'm gonna be there right alongside him and go through these tough decisions with him, and ultimately be a better leader at the end of it. Because I think if you break down what we're really here for, what keeps us motivated, and I mean, it's meeting people like yourself. I mean, we've been able to surround ourselves with awesome people who have gotten us to be where we are. And we don't take that for granted. And I know we both want to be incredible leaders one day, whether it's we get that stamp here or the next thing and the next thing. And so that just really solidified more confidence in being there right alongside Alex and during a time that no one has experienced before. And all that we could do is take the feedback and the recommendations from people who have been through similar things, but spin it into our own and communicate that effectively internally. And I think we did a really good job with that. If you were to ask our employees, and yes, we had to make tough decisions, but everybody understood why. They were logical. And so
it's interesting that you point that out, because I think character is most often, we shine a light on character when we go through bad times. It's very easy to be a good vendor when times are good and everybody's making orders, but it's when something breaks that you really understand the character of a person or a company. And I always tell the people that I work with, when things are bad, I'm like, this is how we shine. We make it right in a bad time. And it sounds like, I think you could say the same thing about leadership qualities. It's easy to be a good leader when times are good. Yeah. It's not, I don't want to discount how important it is to be a good leader when it's good, but it really, really matters a lot when times are bad. It's just and I think that's when you learn the most about people. So that's interesting that you saw that in Alex. Now you got to follow that one up, Alex. I'm interested to see how you're going to try to top that.
I don't know if it was anything that I was surprised by. I think it was maybe a continuation of something that I was originally surprised by when we first started, and that was after I'd sold Wake Wash, I tried to do what is now 2U with someone else at EY. So someone that's with people that were smarter than both Dan and I, have a work ethic, have all that. And as soon as, one school, because we were trying to go after universities instead of cities the second iteration when we tried it, and we had one school say no, and those people were, I don't know if this is going to work. No, are you kidding? You know what I mean? Like one customer it doesn't work for, and you're done, you're out. After we'd spent a lot of time talking about it, working on it. It was like one school said no, and you're out. And Dan, on the other hand, was originally helping us build the website, and then got more and more attached to it. Liked the idea, and was willing to do all the things that I shared at the beginning of the call, quit his job, pack up his life, move down here. And so that didn't stop when the pandemic happened. We had to make these hard decisions. It wasn't, I don't know if I can do this. I just moved down to Atlanta. I'm done. I'm doing the next thing. It was like you said, you probably got a little bit more emotional. I got emotional about it. It was tough. But it was very quickly, all right, yeah, I can move again back from Atlanta to Charlotte, who now his now wife is down there. He's had her move like 4 times, and it wasn't, nope, I'm done, I'm out, I give up, I quit. It was always, hey, this is tough, but we're going to figure it out. And so like just that loyalty and willing to persevere. And so again, I guess I wasn't surprised. I guess I continue to be surprised by it. Eventually everyone has their limit, and I wasn't sure when that was going to hit, and it didn't hit. And that's the kind of person that Dan is, hey, I'm going to figure this out. We're going to either take this ship to the promised land, or we're going to go down sinking with it, and we're not going to give up on it or give up on each other. So I'm
smiling as you tell this story, because as we were growing level, Chris and I we'd pull up after something really shitty happened. Because let's be honest, it happens all the time. Something bad happens to your business, and every time we'd sit down before we've had a chance to debrief on it, like we've sent the email, hey, this is what's going on, we got to deal with it, let's sit down and have a meeting. And he or I would both just quip like, let's just shut down, we're done, we can't overcome this. You know, it is funny to think. It was a running joke for us, because there's so many things that could make you shut down, but you don't. And when you hear about somebody, I think that's the difference between a founder and an employee, is that the employee will give up much earlier than a founder will. So that's interesting that you were able to appreciate that, because your second go around, you know, you saw that firsthand. Now, to me, what's interesting is that you still need people who are top performing, motivated, high work ethic employees. And I think that's a hard part as a leader, is to be able to separate the two and say, well, Alex and Dan are putting up with a whole bunch of bullshit. Employees don't necessarily put up with the same level of bullshit that founders will, but it doesn't mean that they can't be employees. It just means they can't be a founder. And I think that's something that I've struggled with in businesses. It's so refreshing when you see the founder mentality, and so you can't let it crush your soul, but it always does. I'm like, why is this person thinking this way? This isn't, you know. But it tells you they're not a founder, they're not a partner, they don't have skin in the game the way that the partner does.
I think that was awesome to experience too, and it's cliche, but you know, people say lead by example, and I think when him and I did put our heads together, and you know, behind closed doors, of course, we'd be emotional. This is tough. This is hard. What do we do? No one's ever faced this, and you almost want to find these reasons to, you know, discount what's going on. Hey, it's the environment around me, but then you realize at the end of the day, we're in control of our destiny, and we have a team that's looking up to us and looking for guidance. And so we need to come out. We need to be as strong as we can, and but also vulnerable, and allow them to be empathetic to what's going on. And that's exactly what happened. It was amazing to me to see the team rally at a time that, you know, we're having to make layoffs, we're having to shut markets down. The world's like, you know, people are freaking out. I mean, this has been going on for over a year now. Like, and the team was immediately ready to go. We believe in the vision, as we always have, and we believe in the direction that we're going. And this is just a different way to get there. It's the same end. And so that was awesome to experience too, just to see those employees, as you mentioned, who might not have as much skin in the game, say, I believe in these guys. I believe in what they're telling me, because we believed it. And that's what's important, is to be authentic and to be transparent and vulnerable, especially at times that are tricky like this.
We had to just spin it and not even really spin it, because it is what it is. It was just another challenge that we had to turn into an opportunity. And I think we were fortunate enough to quickly make that decision and communicate it effectively. And like Alex said, I mean, everybody was bought in. It was sort of the same vision, just a different means to get there. But it made sense. And so I think that just built up more confidence in that smaller team. And looking back on it, I mean, that's what I'm most excited about, is what's been the most fun in this whole thing is like that really early days of grinding with the small team, and everyone's wearing multiple hats, and we're back at that level. And yes, I want to get back to being big and $100 million company, and we will get there. But this is just that really exciting opportunity to kind of build up what was exciting in the early days again. That's
great. And you guys will get there. I can tell already. Who knows how long it is, but hopefully with the vaccine and some of the more promising numbers that are coming out, it's the macro environment moves in the direction that you need to go. Just out of curiosity, did you guys go after any PPP money? Because you had a pretty significant payroll at the time of COVID.
Yeah, we did. So we, through the investor network again, through the founder network here in Charlotte and beyond, I mean, people are always sharing really helpful information, and we were fortunate enough to benefit from both rounds of PPP. We've always done the R&D tax credit. We've always, we're doing the ERC credit. So I mean, every bit of relief out there, I think you'd be foolish. You're doing a disservice to your employees, your investors, yourself if you don't go take advantage of the packages that are out there to help for this exact reason, whether it's a pandemic or it's a R&D tax credit that's existed for a while. You have to take advantage of it. I agree
for sure. What about operating the store during the lockdown? What extra precautions did you have to take to keep the thing operating, or did your operations have to change as a result of the pandemic?
Yes, I mean, I would want to use this opportunity as a time to gas someone up a little bit. Beck Miller, this guy on our team, he, I think it was even in February, he was like, hey, this is doomsday. We need to order masks and hand sanitizer. And I remember me and our head of operations at the time were, okay, yeah, like we need to get some of this stuff. And, we allocated a budget to it and got it. And then sure enough, a month later, people are storming Walmarts and Amazon sold out, and all of this PPE is gone.
He got you to buy toilet paper too, hopefully.
So I mean, he checked all the boxes and got it. And so thankfully, I mean, from the beginning, we were doing social distancing before that was a term that the CDC even put out. He was, Beck was on, hey, we should have folding spaced out by each bay, have one in between people. And so he was like the godfather of making sure that the place was safe, and we didn't miss a beat. Again, we grew throughout the whole thing, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to his foresight, making this experience. What we've always tried to do at the laundry room is make it an elevated, customer-centric experience. And I think that's part of the reason why the laundry room grew instead of declined, is that people recognize they actually care about me. This isn't about squeezing every penny they can out of me like a lot of the other laundromat owners. This is, hey, if your stuff's in the washer and you're waiting, wait in your car, or the bench is outside. We want to try to be safe and not, because there's people in there. There's a lot of people waiting and congregating, and at the time, people didn't know, they knew what they didn't know, and they weren't sure, is this going to spread by me sitting and standing here, or is this not? And so we tried to take the approach of, let's just be safe, and people, I think, appreciated it.
Yeah, it was just another way to differentiate ourselves. I mean, laundromats are, it's a competitive market. There's 35,000 laundromats across the
You have
country.
one right across the street from
another.
On Woodlawn.
Yeah, and it was just a way for us to differentiate ourselves and show that we were there to build an experience for our customers. And we decided to give out free masks and sanitizer where others either didn't have it or would charge for it. And we just wanted to set that bar high to differentiate ourselves, and ultimately knowing that it would benefit us from a business perspective, and it did. And now we were fortunate that laundromats were deemed an essential business, and so we were able to remain open and adhere to a lot of those guidelines, and then quickly get back to business and setting that standard. And now I think that's ultimately what's going to help differentiate us in a franchising world, and seeing that the success that we had during the pandemic, but also how we implement those processes very quickly, and others can benefit from kind of following those same things.
So I imagine, because it's not just the customers that benefit from those policies, but I've got to imagine that your employees see that, because it's stressful. You're being told to go work in a laundromat or a grocery store or any other essential work category. Can you maybe speak to how much that helped the uncertainty for your employees, the policies that they're seeing, or is it more about the leadership, or is it a combination of everything?
I think it was a combination of all the above. One of the first things we did was we opted to pay our frontline employees more that were at the laundromat, working with customers, being around dirty clothes, all these germs that we didn't know how long it lasted on clothes, on metal, on plastics at the time. We know a lot more now. We wanted to pay them more to incentivize them, but also reward them for taking that additional risk. They knew about the policies that we're implementing. They knew that we had a plan in the event that there was a positive case at the facility.
So you had no positive cases at the facility?
We eventually did, and again, we put our policy in place. We had someone come out and clean and sanitize. We were shut down for a few days, and I think just knowing that we were even thinking about it and considering them, and it wasn't just reaction. It wasn't a reactive measure. It wasn't a we don't care, we'll figure it out if it happens kind of thing. We did have these proactive plans in place, and I think I'd like to think I want to go ask them now. And in hindsight, hey, did you appreciate that, or was it how did you feel about it? But no one's left, no one's quit.
That's
so
great.
I feel like they value it. I feel like they appreciated it, and it felt like it was the right thing to do.
The other thing I think we did that we found an opportunity on is just educate, like watching consumer behavior change and educating our frontline workers on ultimately the importance of their job. I mean, yes, it's a luxury service, but we were finding more and more healthcare workers using our service because they didn't have time to do their laundry. And so you're still saving. The sanitization component ultimately came in. The temperature of the dryers actually killed. It operated at such a high temperature that it would kill those viruses, and so you weren't exposed to those. And so there's a lot of educational components, not only our process and how it helped save people time, but just even giving those people their time so they could go fight this craziness and understand how that they're going to change their new norm, whether it's a teacher who has to now do virtual learning or teaching and they don't have as much time. And so using that as an educational component as well to reiterate how important the vision still was to why we were there cleaning people's clothes.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it's kind of reframing your purpose. You're able to reframe because it's very true that, hey, this has become a very important service for a very important group of people. That's an awesome lesson. And I think that, again, COVID created an opportunity to do that, but it's something we can all do in our businesses all the time. And we shouldn't wait for a crisis to do these type of things and figure out what is the right way to frame the mission for my employees. Because what it sounds like is you've created, you were able to articulate a mission for your employees that they could take some pride in. Hey, we're helping this economy in this new norm or whatever this is that we're dealing with. We're helping people to cope with it, and that's great. So, and I know that we're getting coming up on an hour here, so I want to be careful with your time. I've only got a couple more things I'd like to ask you guys. If you were to quantify it as a percentage, and again, I don't want to get into any proprietary details, but how much would you say your business has recovered from the COVID hit? Are you better than where you were? Are you back to where you were? How do you think about quantifying that?
Yeah, so laundry, the at-home pickup and delivery laundry is back to above pre-COVID levels. So that's continued to grow and thrive, which was honestly shocking. We thought people being home, they can throw a load in while they're working, and turns out these families, they're now playing babysitter and meal prepper and work, and they're working. So now they're wearing 3 or 4 hats in the day, and it's
homeschool teacher,
all the above. And so they're looking for as much help as they ever.
By the way, if we don't as a society appreciate our teachers after this, we never will.
No, yeah. And so that's exactly it is people wanted that help more than ever. And so we've seen the laundry continue to be outsourced. Our retail business has grown, as I mentioned, in 20+%. The dry cleaning has really been the drag on our business, as it was half of our revenue. And that's down, at one point it was down 70%. People aren't going into the office. They're not wearing blouses, dresses, suits. And that's returned to not normal, but it's still down 30%, 40%. And I don't think that's going to come back until offices start opening up again and people are going back. And even then, who knows, are there any long, lasting implications of people who are just like CPA firms that are all in jeans now because they're all used to it, and it turns out we don't have to. But I don't know. I see people on Zoom calls wearing button downs and slacks. So I have hope that once you get back into an office, there's going to be peer pressure and people are going to get back into dressing up a little bit.
I think people have an innate need to dress up and look nicely. So we'll figure out an excuse either way, I suspect. It was a nice break.
I saw this tweet, and I forget who it was from, but they were saying, hey, for the people that think that the world isn't going to return back to exactly where it was, here's what's going to happen is you're going to have an investment bank or a bank trying to win a deal, and everyone's going to think you can do it remote because that's what we've been used to for the last year and a half. And then one day some sharp up-and-coming banker is going to get on a plane and fly to that client and meet them in person and wear a suit and shake their hand, and they're going to win the deal because they did that, and then everyone's going to follow suit.
I agree.
And I read that and I was like, okay, yeah, I think we're going to be fine because that makes sense. I mean, nothing can replace the face-to-face human interaction. I mean, being here now talking to you is way better than us on 3 separate computers trying to talk through it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had to do a lot more Zoom interviews, and hands down, the ones where you're in face, in person, there's just no comparison to it for sure. So hopefully that does come back. So how much further do you think your business recovers in 2021? I mean, do you think that this is a big year for you guys, or is it more just set the stage for 2022 to be a big return to growth mode?
I think more of the latter. I think this year is really, Dan kind of brought it up earlier, is that 2U in Charlotte is doing just about as well as it ever has done. It's this new pivot into franchising. We're almost a complete garage, floor startup again. And I think the success of that is really going to be what dictates the answer to that question. Is if franchising takes off and there's product market fit, I think there's an opportunity to be bigger than we've ever been this year. If it's a slower burn and it takes this year to build foundation, and then next year is the year that franchising really pops, then I'll say it'd be next year.
Awesome. So we've kind of hit on this, but one of the things I realized during the process watching you guys is that you'd raised a nice chunk of money. You started to deploy it carefully, looking to create options and optionality and opportunities. And when the crisis hit, you quickly cut off that small spend already. And obviously that has served you well. It's easy to imagine how bad it would have gotten if you hadn't raised the cash, or if you had deployed it quickly, relying on that next round of funding that a lot of entrepreneurs tend to, and probably the folks at Washio and Spin were constantly depending on. I think it's a good lesson for an entrepreneur during any time. We counsel a lot of companies that we talk to on, don't focus on raising a $20 million round and then chasing hockey stick growth. Build a business incrementally, raise more money than you need, spend less money than you raise, and build a fundamentally good business. And don't get stuck on a course of action. When things change, you need to be able to kind of have your head on a swivel and respond to facts on the ground. I think that's advice I would give a startup at any point, but I think it gets amplified during a crisis. What other lessons did you guys learn other than kind of that whole overarching theme of let's raise more money than we might need, let's deploy it more slowly than we think we should? And be very, in the end, very conservative with the cash. Obviously, that served you well. But what other things did you learn through this process? Were there other things beyond those kind of basic business principles? Maybe being opportunistic.
I think that's going back to that. We kind of talked about it earlier. Is just you can't ever get comfortable, and I think that's why founders and entrepreneurs are wired a little bit differently. Is you're unlike
you get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And once you get comfortable, you're like, oh,
something's wrong.
Yeah, something's wrong. Like, and we ask ourselves, like, what is wrong? Why am I feeling like this? And I think I've become a lot more uncomfortable with being comfortable, and I think that's just like a big lesson you need to continue. You just can't get complacent, because then that's when you just start settling and things start winding down. And that's why we're wired a little bit differently. We want to feel uncomfortable. We want to be pressured into a corner and find our way out of it. And this was the ultimate corner to get sort of pressured into, at least for now. And so that was a huge lesson, like that, more than ever, that continue to be uncomfortable. That's when you're going to learn the most. I mean, I can't even think of an opportunity where we were able to learn more than we were just dealing with a lot of this and pivoting and tough decisions and new opportunities and communicating, new leadership, et cetera. So I think that's a major lesson learned.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for operating in that productive discomfort zone. You don't want to be too uncomfortable, but I think people generally thrive when there's just enough discomfort to where you have to innovate, you have to think, you have to dig in and run with it. Well, look, guys, this has been great. I really appreciate you joining me today. I look forward to our next conversation, whatever that may be. Hopefully it's not how Dan got in trouble for being late for dinner.
Part 3.
All right, guys. Cheers. Keep up the good fight. Love what you guys are doing.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Sean.